The chamber lights hit him like a firing squad the moment he stepped inside, but Ambassador Ross didn't even blink. He'd been shot at before, by people who actually knew how to aim, so a few hundred glowing alien eyes on stalks, clusters, or whatever counted as faces around here didn't impress him. The Galactic Council Hall stretched upward in a spiral of hovering platforms, each one packed with delegates who clearly wanted him dead. Or imprisoned. Or dissolved. Hard to tell with the species who reproduced by budding. A deep, gong-like tone vibrated the air, followed by a metallic voice screeching through the amplifiers. The human representative will present himself for judgment. Ross smoothed his suit jacket. They wanted theatrics? Fine. He gave them a bow so casual it bordered on insulting. A roar of outrage swept the chamber. Good. Let them be angry. Angry people talk too much. A gelatinous orb on platform 17 trembled violently. Human! Your species stands accused of subverting the galactic order. Ross raised one eyebrow. Morning to you too. Another wave of outrage. A few aliens hissed, clicked, or made wet slapping noises that were probably curses. A four-armed reptilian slammed its claws on the railing. My son abandoned his honorable military path to join a human rock band. Explain this crime. Ross blinked. Rock band? Good for him. Terrible pay, though. The reptilian shrieked in a pitch that made 3 ambassadors faint. Next platform. A tall, moth-like creature fluttered forward, shimmering with anxiety. My daughter refuses her arranged mating cycle. Says she wants to date a human minor. Do you understand the instability this causes? Ross sighed. Ma'am, I can't control what your daughter finds attractive. But I will say human minors are hard-working folks. Pandemonium. The council erupting like popcorn in a microwave. Ross folded his hands behind his back, watching them lose their minds one species at a time. Then came the Dervax Prime Minister, a massive elephant-rhino hybrid with ceremonial tusk armor. Due to your species' cultural exports, our workers demand weekends. What is a weekend? Ross smiled slowly. 2 days off. No work. You know, life. A gasp spread through the platforms like a physical shockwave. Several delegates nearly toppled over. A few actually fainted. A plant-based species rustled its leaves aggressively. Your humans ask too many questions. Too many opinions. Too many ideas. It spreads. Ross nodded. We do talk a lot, yes. See? The plant shrieked. He admits it. Ross resisted the urge to laugh. He'd been in hostage negotiations with less drama. He forced his face into diplomatic neutrality, though the corners of his mouth twitched. These beings had faster-than-light travel, matter sculptors, energy shields that could survive supernovas, and they were terrified of a teenager starting a rock band. He scanned the towering platforms, noting clusters of species whispering, others vibrating with agitation. A few scribbled on data pads, taking notes. Not good. He didn't want the wrong words on galactic record. Earth wasn't exactly ready for a war with everyone. At the central podium, a tri-headed creature leaned forward. Its 3 mouths spoke one after the other in a synchronized rhythm. Human Representative Ross, your species is charged with destabilizing the ancient cosmic hierarchy. And doing what specifically? Ross asked. A hologram flickered on, a compilation of humanity's crimes. Human memes being shared on alien networks. A teenage alien wearing a leather jacket, strumming a guitar. Workers chanting for shorter hours. Interspecies couples laughing in bars. Aliens binge-watching Earth dramas and discovering something dangerous, empathy. Ross watched the montage. That's it. No doomsday weapons? No invasion fleets? Just culture? It is worse than weapons! The tri-head shouted, all 3 mouths vibrating in panic. Ross cleared his throat. You dragged me across the galaxy because your kids got inspired? Inspired is the problem, bellowed a slug creature from platform 6. Your species spreads hope? Hope. Of all the things to be banned. Ross placed his palms on the podium. Listen, humanity isn't trying to destabilize anyone. We're just. You rose too fast, a crystalline ambassador shouted. Your species went from isolated primitives to interstellar merchants in a century. You challenged economic monopolies. You questioned our protocols. You innovate. Ross rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's called progress. A thunderous chorus of "N-O" crashed through the chamber. Ross glanced at the exits. Blocked. Guards posted. Weapons charged. Wonderful. This wasn't a trial. It was a prelude to a verdict they'd already picked. He needed to stall. Confuse. Get them talking. A fish-like delegate slapped its fins on its desk. Human Ambassador Ross, before sentencing, you must address the council with your plea. Ah. The opening. He stepped forward, let his voice drop into the calm, rumbling register he'd used negotiating ceasefires in far uglier rooms than this. Before I make my plea, he said, I have one question. The platforms leaned in. They expected begging. An apology. A plea for mercy. He gave them something else. Why attack us? The words echoed like a pulse blast. At first, nothing. Then the silence spread, thick and suffocating. Delegates froze mid-breath. Wings stopped fluttering. Tentacles stiffened. Lights dimmed. Someone dropped a data pad. No one moved to pick it up. Ross watched them closely. Fear. Real fear. Not of humanity's armies, but of the question itself. Because it demanded an answer. And every species here knew the truth they couldn't speak out loud. Finally, a trembling insectoid rose from its seat. Because your people ask questions like that. Another voice cracked. You challenge what has always been. Another. You teach our youth to want more than obedience. A dozen more erupted, shouting over one another. You humans spread dangerous ideas. You undermine our control. You are unpredictable. You laugh in the face of authority. Your humor collapses discipline. Your art ignites rebellion. Your culture breeds freedom. The chamber descended into chaos. Ross's lips curled upward. All he'd done was ask one question. And it had detonated the council from the inside. Exactly as planned? The council chamber never truly had silence, yet after Ross's question shattered their fragile facade, the noise that followed was something else entirely. Chaotic, primal, 1,000 species shouting in frequencies that would have liquefied an unshielded human skull. The hall flickered as diplomats panicked, platforms jolting erratically, translators overloading. Ross stood at the podium with the stillness of a man who'd survived battlefield artillery and Thanksgiving dinners with hostile in-laws. Nothing rattled him now. A hulking guard species thundered down the ramp toward him, its armor plates clacking like angry castanets. Without waiting for instruction, it jabbed a plasma pike in Ross's direction. You have destabilized the assembly. Stand down. Ross glanced at the weapon, then at the guard. Buddy, this room was unstable long before I walked in. The guard hesitated, not because of fear, but confusion. Humans had a way of answering threats with sarcasm so casually that the hostility never quite landed. Ross stepped back just enough to look like he was complying, though he noted every exit path, every trembling ambassador, every platform where species whispered furiously among themselves. A shimmering blue cloud being drifted toward the central microphone. Its voice was a soft chime. We warned you, Chair Sovereign. Humans are corrosive. Their questions unravel structure. Their presence warps expectation. Warp expectation? Ross echoed. You mean we think for ourselves? A ripple went through the platforms. Recognition, realization, 1,000 different shades of dread. The tri-headed Chair Sovereign slammed its gavel staff onto the dais. Order! Order now! The staff crackled with electrical discharge, and a field of static rippled through the chamber, briefly silencing every species except Ross. Translator filters kicked in, some collapsed under the strain. The chair's central head glared at Ross. Human Ambassador, your question has ignited unrest. You will clarify your intent. My intent? Ross repeated. I asked why you want to attack us. Seems like a fair question before someone vaporizes my planet. One of the side heads snarled. You were not meant to provoke philosophical revolt. Ross spread his hands. Maybe don't put me in a room with philosophers then. Several ambassadors exchanged glances. Some hid laughter, tiny, suppressed gestures, but Ross caught every one. Seeds of dissent. Cracks in an ancient wall. A mechanical spider-like species clattered forward and activated a hollow display. It projected charts showing rising protests across multiple star systems. Alien youth waving human-style banners. Workers demanding rights. Students questioning ancient hierarchies. All sparked by cultural contact. This, the spider clicked, is the contagion. You humans introduce variables that destabilize obedient populations. Curiosity, creativity, resistance. These impulses were dormant. You reactivated them. Ross blinked slowly. You're blaming us because your people realize they're miserable? Gasps. Hisses. Outraged squeals. Someone threw what looked like a glowing fruit. It exploded against the shield field with a sharp pop. The chair of the Varanchi collective, thin, elegant, feathered, lifted a trembling hand. We cannot allow your species to continue sowing dissent. We must neutralize Earth before the infection spreads. Ross wanted to laugh. Infection. They made human culture sound like a disease, and maybe to them, it was. He leaned on the podium with deliberate calm. Let me get this straight. You want to annihilate us because your citizens discovered music, weekends, and personal choice? The tri-headed chair shrieked. Yes. The chamber responded with a mixture of agreement and horrified denial. A cluster of ambassadors began shouting over one another, some blaming humans, others accusing their own governments of deception. One particularly enormous amphibian diplomat bellowed that exterminating a species over artistic disturbance was barbaric, while a crystalline representative countered that humans were cosmic chaos incarnate. The argument spiraled. Platforms bobbed and spun as delegates abandoned decorum entirely. Ross watched with clinical detachment. He'd seen gangs tear themselves apart like this when the truth cut too close. Then a voice rose, quiet, trembling. One Ross hadn't heard yet. A small, fox-like alien stood on its platform, gripping the railing. My people were never allowed to ask why we obeyed. It whispered. Until we met humans, we never realized we could. A hush spread for a beat before the chair sovereign struck its staff again. Silence! You will not speak such heresy. The fox being didn't back down. Why not? Because humans reminded us we have dreams? The chair motioned to the guards. Detain that delegate immediately. As armored enforcers began to scale the platform, Ross reacted instinctively. He stepped forward, voice rising, not in anger, but authority. You detain him, you proved my point. All eyes turned to him. Ross continued. You fear us because we don't accept your answers without questioning them. But your people, your citizens, they're already questioning. You can crush one delegate. But what about the billions watching right now? The ones hearing your panic? The ones realizing you're terrified of ideas? The triheads froze. Delegates shifted uncomfortably. The guards hesitated, caught in the psychological crossfire. Ross lowered his voice. Your real problem isn't us. It's that your people want what we have. Freedom. Choice. Maybe even joy. And you know you can't stop that forever. The chamber erupted in a fresh storm of shouting, but this time, it wasn't just panic. It was division. Lines were forming. Some delegates demanded immediate military action. Others demanded reforms. A few openly questioned whether humanity should be destroyed or emulated. A sleek, serpentine ambassador leaned into its microphone. Perhaps humanity should be invited to guide social restructuring protocols. A massive arthropod pounded its legs. Absurd. They are destabilizing parasites. Another rose. Or liberators. Or anarchists. Or innovators. Ross watched the fracture deepen. Perfect. Then a sharp voice cut through the chaos. Guards, protect the human! Ross spun. A group of ambassadors, half a dozen species, had stepped forward, wings flared, claws raised, armor plates vibrating. Not hostile. Protective. They were choosing a side. The council hall buzzed with a dangerous energy now. No balance. No order. Just fear, hope, anger, realization, all colliding. Ross knew what it meant. This wasn't a trial anymore. It was the beginning of a political civil war. And he was standing in the middle of it. The lights dimmed without warning, plunging the council chamber into a reddish haze that made every species' silhouette stretch like predators across the walls. Ross tensed. Emergency lockdown protocols. Always the first sign things were about to get messy. Platforms jerked upward, wings flared, tendrils lashed. Delegates scrambled in every direction as alarms pulsed through the hall with a low, vibrating hum that crawled under the skin. A booming voice thundered from unseen speakers. Security override. Threat level, human-triggered contagion. All guards to the central podium. Ross exhaled through his nose. Of course. Blame the human. A dozen armored guards descended on anti-grav boots, forming a wall around him. Not protective. Containment. Their weapons hummed with heat. One of the pro-human ambassadors, a slender reptilian female whose scales shimmered blue, stepped in front of Ross with a hiss. You will not harm the diplomat. The lead guard clicked its mandibles. Earth has encouraged galactic destabilization. Any sympathizers will be detained. Her frill flared. I am not a sympathizer. I am awake. The guards raised their weapons. Ross reacted before he could think. Hey! Unless you want this broadcast across every news channel in the galaxy, maybe don't start shooting your own government on live holofeed. They hesitated. Cameras, hundreds of them, were still transmitting. Billions were watching. The galaxy was witnessing its own rulers unravel. Behind them, the chair's sovereign screamed, literally screamed. Cut the feeds! Now! Technicians scrambled. Sparks flew as consoles overloaded. But even Ross knew the truth. Once a broadcast leaked into the quantum mesh, it was already in 1,000 homes, networks, pirate channels. Too late. The Triheads realized it too. Their faces contorted. Ross leaned close to the nearest guard and muttered, You pulled the trigger? Congratulations, you just became the villain of 1 billion angry citizens. The guard backed off by a single step. Just enough space. The chambers shook violently. A blast wave tore across the lower levels, tossing platforms like leaves. Delegates toppled over rails. Some shrieked. Others fought. A handful scrambled to escape routes only to find them sealed shut. The pro-human ambassador grabbed Ross. We must move! They're trying to reset the chamber gravity. Ross glanced overhead. Massive stabilizer arrays were powering up. If they overloaded. Well, he muttered. That explains why they told me to sign a liability waiver. The gravity field sputtered, reversed, then surged sideways. Suddenly every species in the chamber was tumbling across surfaces, slamming into walls or clinging to railings. Ross grabbed the ambassador's arm and they spun together, sliding toward a maintenance hatch. Open it! Ross shouted. It is sealed. Ross gritted his teeth, then slammed his heel into the panel, once, twice, until it buckled with a hiss and popped open. They tumbled inside just as a crystalline delegate flew past them screaming in 6 harmonies. The maintenance corridor was narrow, vibrating with system overloads. Sparks rained from conduits. The ambassador pushed hair like frills from her eyes. Ambassador Ross, you do not understand. Your question has triggered ideological awakening across 13 systems. The Council fears revolution. Revolution? Ross crawled forward, gripping pipes to keep his balance. Lady, they're about to start a massacre. No, she whispered. They are about to start a purge. That made Ross pause. A purge meant eliminating anyone who questioned authority, including the delegates who had shown sympathy. Including her. He swallowed hard and kept moving. Behind them, the chamber shook again, another explosion. Or sabotage? Hard to tell. Every boom echoed like thunder in the metal walls. When they reached a junction, Ross peeked down the left corridor. Guards swarmed it. Right corridor, sparking wires, smoke, but empty. He pointed right. That way. They moved quickly, well, as quickly as a middle-aged diplomat could while avoiding electrocution. As they rounded another bend, lights flickered on above them. Not normal lighting. Targeting lasers. A sniper drone hovered at the far end of the hall. Ross grabbed the ambassador and shoved them behind a structural pillar just as the drone fired. The plasma bolt seared the air where his head had been. "Assassins!" she gasped. "They want to erase the symbol of resistance." Ross grunted. "Fantastic. I'm a symbol now." Another bolt sizzled past, cracking the pillar. Ross peeked around the edge. The drone was lining up another shot. He scanned the environment. Pipes. Panels. Loose cables. He spotted a dangling cable arcing with electricity. Perfect. Ross tore off a piece of metal paneling, braced himself, then lobbed it toward the cable. The panel clipped the wire just enough to send a surge of sparks exploding outward. The drone took the blast full force, convulsed, and spiraled into the floor in a shower of metal. Ross winced. "Hope that wasn't someone's expensive pet." The ambassador stared. "You are very dangerous. Lady, I'm from Detroit. We improvise." They continued forward, slipping deeper into service corridors until they reached a small maintenance chamber overlooking the council hall through a grated vent. Ross crawled up and peered through. The council floor was a battlefield. Delegates screamed, argued, or fled. Guards fought each other, some defending the authoritarian rulers, others refusing to attack civilians. Political alliances shattered in real time. Old enemies stood side by side, old partners now traded blows. And above it all, the chair sovereign tried to regain control, screeching orders drowned out by chaos. Ross whispered, "It's happening. They're eating themselves alive." The ambassador's eyes shimmered. "This is your fault, and your gift. You made them confront the truth." Ross exhaled. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just a council meltdown anymore. It was the beginning of a galactic uprising. Ross pushed back from the vent. "We need to get out of here. And then, we need to make sure Earth survives whatever comes next." The ambassador nodded. "There is a way. But it will require one more question." Ross cracked a crooked grin. "Good. I've got plenty of those. CTA, if you're still here, you're the hero of this tale. Stick with Ross. Subscribe for the final showdown in Chapter 4. ***. Ross pushed away from the vents, breath steady despite the roaring chaos below. The maintenance room vibrated as alarms blared through the infrastructure. Somewhere in the distance, a metal structure collapsed with a deafening clang that sent dust drifting down through the grated ceiling. The ambassador beside him, scale-frilled, shaken, breath trembling, held onto a support beam as if expecting the whole chamber to fall apart. It just might. "We must reach the diplomatic shuttle port," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. "Before the Sovereign orders a full lockdown. If they trap us here, they'll turn me into the galaxy's shortest-lived political catalyst," Ross finished dryly. She blinked, confused. Humor didn't translate well between species, but the tension eased for half a second. Enough to keep them moving. They slipped out of the side chamber into another metallic corridor. Emergency sirens pulsed in alternating colors, green for structural failures, red for violence, purple for political mutiny, or so Ross assumed. They passed two delegates crouched behind a shattered railing, one sobbing, the other furiously typing on a holoslate, possibly resigning or declaring independence, maybe both. Ross made eye contact briefly. The sobbing one asked in broken English, "Is humanity truly this disruptive?" Ross gave a helpless shrug. "We try our best." They pressed on before the ambassador could scold him. Ahead lay a cross-section of 4 corridors. All signs pointed toward either danger or something worse, committee meetings. But the corridor to the left flickered with overhead lights that hadn't yet blown out. Good enough. They darted down the hallway only to stop short as a squad of elite guards rounded the corner. Not like the previous ones. These wore obsidian armor and carried staff weapons that hummed with lethal intent. The ambassador whispered, "The Sovereign's Honor Guard." "Let me guess," Ross muttered. "They don't honor much besides executions." He pulled her behind a narrow recess in the wall. The honor guard passed by, searching for someone, him. The lead guard scanned the hall with optical sensors that glowed like tiny suns. Ross held his breath. Any movement, any sound. A distant platform collapsed, crashing onto the council floor. The rumble shook everything. Pipes rattled, panels fell, and the guards rushed off toward the disturbance. Ross exhaled slowly. "Okay. That's our open door." They ran. Further down, they reached an airlock door marked with angular alien lettering. The ambassador pressed her palm to a scanner. It lit up, then turned blood red. "Access denied," she whispered. "They've revoked my clearance." Ross stepped next to her. "Mind if I try something?" He reached out and slammed his palm against the panel. Nothing happened except a mildly insulting chirp. He tried again, harder. The door remained stubborn. The ambassador stared. "Did you expect that to work?" "Sometimes slapping things helps," Ross said defensively. "TV remotes, vending machines, planetary bureaucracy. Your technology is primitive," she murmured. "And still somehow more intuitive." Ross eyed the panel, noticing a maintenance port just beneath it. He knelt and popped open the cover, revealing glowing filaments and energy conduits. Sparks crackled. "Think I can short this without killing us?" "No." He twisted 2 wires. The door hissed open. She stared. "Your species terrifies me." Ross grinned. "Right back at you." They slipped through into a docking ring where sleek diplomatic shuttles floated behind force fields like ships in a futuristic museum. Except this museum had smoke pouring from vents, alarms screaming, and guards pouring in from multiple entrances. Ross spotted a small 2-seater shuttle near the far side. "That one. Small enough to ignore, fast enough to get us out." They ran. Halfway across the bay, the tri-headed chair sovereign descended from an upper walkway, wrapped in shimmering command robes. Its 3 mouths curled into a serpentine sneer. "Human! You will not leave this station alive!" Ross slowed. Not fear, assessment. Behind the sovereign, 2 honor guards took sniper positions. Ahead, more guards closed off the path to the shuttle. They were trapped. The ambassador whispered, "Ross, I am sorry. It seems they have anticipated." Ross raised a hand gently. "Sure. I'm thinking." The sovereign pointed the gavel staff toward him. Energy built at the tip, bright enough to cast harsh shadows. "You have torn apart the council with your insolence. Your questions breed anarchy. You humans do not obey. You do not conform. You do not know your place." Ross stepped forward, calm, almost conversational. "Maybe that's your problem." The central head snarled. "This is your end." Ross tilted his head. "Before you pull that trigger, want to hear one more question?" That froze the room. Delegates on balconies stopped fleeing. Guards paused mid-step. The ambassador's breath hitched. The sovereign's 3 heads flicked in synchronized irritation, but also fear. Ross's voice dropped, not loud but carrying weight. "If you attack us, if you destroy Earth, silence our music, crush our spirit, what happens to your people afterward?" The gavel staff dimmed by a fraction. Ross continued, stepping closer. "Do you think they'll go back to obeying? To staying quiet? To pretending they're content with chains?" He gestured toward the chamber's chaos echoing beyond the doors. "Look around you. They've tasted freedom. A spark of it. You think killing me puts that genie back in the bottle?" Delegates murmured. Guards faltered. Ross's voice sharpened like a blade. You're not afraid of humans. You're afraid of losing control. One of the sovereign's heads snarled. Another trembled. The third twitched spasmodically. Ross pressed harder. Your citizens are watching. Right now. Across 13 systems. They're seeing you choose fear over reason. Oppression over evolution. They're already questioning everything. The sovereign's staff flickered. Ross lowered his voice further, eyes locked on all three heads. So tell me, what happens when billions start asking the same question I did? Silence. Then the sovereign screamed, not in anger, but in raw panic, and fired. A brilliant bolt shot toward Ross. But the ambassador lunged, slamming her hand on a side control pillar. A blast shield erupted from the floor, intercepting the bolt and ricocheting it upward. The energy blast hit the ceiling, fracturing the structure. Debris rained down. The honor guards dove aside. Ross grabbed the ambassador's wrist. Move! They sprinted for the shuttle. A falling support beam crushed the floor behind them. The entire base shook. Guards shouted. Weapons fired, beams carving molten streaks through the deck. Ross slammed his palm on the shuttle door. It slid open. They dove inside just as the ceiling buckled. The ambassador hit the controls. Hold on! The shuttle blasted forward, smashing through a destabilizing force field as explosions tore the docking ring apart behind them. A final blinding flash swallowed the council bay. When the shuttle broke free into open space, drifting embers cascading around them, Ross looked back at the collapsing station. It's over, the ambassador whispered. Ross shook his head. No. It's beginning. Across the galaxy, broadcasts were already spreading. Citizens rising. Dictators trembling. Revolutions igniting. And all sparked by one human question. Why attack us?